this lesson I'm going to show you how to make these Gypsy set studs. Check it out. I'll be setting a pair of synthetic round rubies, and these are 5mm in diameter. And to make the studs I'm using 1.8mm round sterling silver wire, and this is 120mm long. You're not going to need all that, but it is easier to make the jump rings if it is longer. You can use something slightly thinner if you wish, or even a little bit thicker. It's not really that important, but what is important is getting the right size stake, and we use this to wrap around to make the jump rings. So I recommend something around about 0.5mm to 1mm smaller than the diameter of the stone. So this is 4mm, and I'm going to wrap it around just over 3 times. So just trap the wire and the drill. So you could use anything, any kind of stake to do this. You might find that you've got a punch that's the right diameter, but I find a set of drills is really handy to have. It's already got the millimeter markings on there, or you can get ready-made stakes for doing this kind of thing. So I'll take it around. That's once, twice, and 3 times. The ends slightly, then bring it together, and if there is a step there, just squeeze that out. That one's not got a step. I'll see what the next one's like. One's got a slight step, so just squeeze the higher one down till it matches the other one. There's no step there now. And for the last one, we don't really need to close the gap because we're going to cut this in half, so make sure it is perfectly divided. So you've got 2 halves exactly the same. And just heat up the jump ring till it gets to soldering temperature, so it should be just going cherry red, and pop the ball of solder on there right on the joint and just allow it to run through. So just check it's gone right through, and then put it to one side, do the other one. Using the doming block, and what we're going to do is give it a slight dome. It's going to make it a much more attractive setting. So find the right dome for your punch. There we go, that one there. And this punch is a 11mm. Again, it doesn't matter so much. You can use something from 10 to 13, 14mm. It doesn't really matter. It's going to form a nice shape regardless. So a couple of good whacks. Make sure it's spread the metal evenly, so it's not too thin on one side or the other. Do the same to the other one. What we're going to do is put the half jump rings onto the settings like so, and they're not going to solder straight on like that. They're not going to fit properly. And also I want the stone as low into the setting as possible, so these I'm going to just file down a fraction. And at this stage, if you find that the 2 half jump rings aren't perfectly matched, you can match them up by filing more off one than the other. I'll just take a little bit more off, and if you're not too sure, just give it 2 or 3 runs with your file, leave it at that, and then we'll check once we've prepared the setting for the basket part of the setting. And to do that, what we're going to do is I always recommend, nearly always recommend, to put all your solder joints together. So we're going to find the solder joint on the setting, and I can see that it's there. There should be some evidence. I'll just scratch it on so that I don't lose it. Just bring it around so I can see on the underside where it is, and then you've got 2 ways to do this. There's probably more, but I'll show you two ways. So with a round needle file, I'll just file where the joint is there, and then just put the needle file right across the back of the setting and put a little file mark on the opposite side. So again, make sure that it's perfectly through the center and file along. You can keep using your file, or this is a 2mm ball burr. I'm just going to make a little divot and what I'll do is I'll just check to see what I want the basket part of the setting. What I want it to do is just hold in place perfectly square, so not leaning one side or the other, and it's going to make it so much easier to solder if it stays like so. I think that's enough. So if you're confident with your burring, you can just go straight to the burr and don't worry about the file, but that's totally up to you. I can see the solder joint is just there. So again, just burr right on the bottom edge of the setting and then one on the opposite side. So hopefully you can see what is symmetrical through the setting there. And what we're going to do as well at this stage is just see how much gap we've got between the basket and the setting, and from that judgment I can see that I'll be able to get the stone in. There won't be much room for the colour of the stone, but that's fine. I can burr into this part here if need be, but what I don't want is for it to be too high or too much of a gap inside later on, because these are going to be studs. There could be any form of jewellery. You can make a ring out of this or whatever, but these are going to be studs, so you want the stone to be as close to the earlobe as possible to ball the solders. To make sure that you have put them right in the middle so that you haven't got an overlap on one side or the other. And before I didn't flux the jump rings, the half jump rings, because there was a little pool of flux on the divots that I created, so that flux just coated the half jump rings as well. So to draw thick wire down into thin wire, you need to point the end so that you can get it into the draw plate. So what I recommend is, rather than use a file to point it where you're just wasting metal, is use your roll mill and just use the wire part of your roll mill. So make sure you turn it 90 degrees as you go, and I'm only rolling the very tip of the wire, and you'll see that it's nicely pointed now, so I can get it into the draw plate and I can start drawing it down. So slowly but surely work it down until I get to the right gauge. And as I said, 0.9 of a mil is ideal for stud earrings. You'll find that anything thicker is generally a little bit too uncomfortable for the wearer. Okay, I've pulled the wire down to 0.9 of a mil, and what I'll do is I'll just cut off two sections that are 12 mil, and that will make slightly longer stems than you'll need, but it's better longer than too short. You can always trim them down later. So now I'm just going to flatten the end. Now you can just solder them straight on the back of the settings, or you can do it the easier way, and that is to make a little indentation, and that'll ensure that the stem is soldered perfectly central, and it will be a much stronger joint. So I've got here a 1mm ball burr, so if you've got one slightly smaller that would be better, but this will do the job. So what I'm doing is I'm just burring in right in the centre, and I'll go in so far to make a really deep divot, and this will keep the stem steady as I solder it. I'll do the other one. Make sure it's in the centre. Now I recommend that you don't use wax to lubricate your burr for doing this, because that'll just put a layer of grease on the metal which will it will hinder the solder from running properly, so make sure you don't do that. So I'm going to use the stems to pick up the solder. So pick up the stems, make sure that the flattened end that you've just filed is, once I pick it up, is pointing forwards, because what we're going to do is just dip that into the pool of flux there, and that will put the flux onto the stem. And now I'm going to pick up the solder with the stem rather than the solder pick. So you can just let it attach to the stem and then hold it onto the setting until the solder runs. I'm using a Smith's mini torch to do this, or little torch. It's a simple project, and you don't necessarily need this type of torch. You can do it with a gas only torch, so an Orca torch, or even a torch that you do your creme brulee with. Okay, so make sure it's straight. That one's a little bit crooked, so I'll just bring that over a little bit, and then I can put it in the pickle and I will tumble them for a while. I use my ring clamp to hold the studs whilst I set the stone, and I'll put it all the way in so that the basket part of the setting is in there, and it should hold the setting really firm whilst I do the work. And to open the setting out, you'll see that the stone will sit on top and not go inside, so I need to remove some of the metal, and to do that a ball burr is going to be your best option. This is actually a 4.8mm ball burr, so it's quite a large one. You can use a smaller one and just whirl it around, so as long as the ball burr is less than the stone size, you should be fine. And if you find that the hole for your stone is a little bit off centre, that could be due to the way it was formed in the doming block. So what you can do is just move the hole just over to centre it. This one was just very slightly out, so we'll correct that. I'm going to use some pro cuts to help with the burring, and it also gives the burr a longer life. I'll just test the stone now. Okay, I can see too much of the girdle now when I put it onto the setting, so I just need to open it up a little bit more. Just whirling the burr around now just to open the setting out. And ideally I just want the girdle to just sit right on the edge of the setting, so it's not quite going in. I think I'm not too far off. Now you can just see the girdle there, and the other side it's kind of tucking its way in, so now I can put the seating cut on the inside. Heart burr, and this one is It's 3.3 mil. Again, it doesn't matter too much to use that size, but something between 2 and 3.5 mil I think would be ideal for this. And I'm just putting a cut about halfway into the thickness of the setting. Hopefully you can see that. I'm sorry, I just took the setting out of view of the camera. Hopefully you can see now. So this cut that I'm putting in, this will be where the girdle of the stone, the very outer edge of the stone, is going to sit. And what we need to do is just go in to the setting enough for the stone to sit in there, but it won't go in until I just remove a little bit of the metal from above this cut. And to do that you can use a small ball burr or a setting burr. So we'll start doing that now. This is a setting burr, so the straight part of the setting burr will just nibble away at the inner edge of the setting, and you can just take off a little bit at a time and just keep testing your stone. So you just want it to either click in there or friction fit in, so it's not too far off. Just trim a little bit more off, but what I'll do is I'll use the other alternative. It's totally up to you, both do the same job. I'll just put a smaller ball burr in that is, so this one's 1.6 mil. Again, the size doesn't really matter. So I'm not taking any metal from under the seating cut, it's just the top part of the cut. And if you take your time, then you should just get the stone to hold itself in the setting before you do any further work. You don't want to cut too much out and it's loose. It will still set, but it just makes it so much easier if it's a really snug fit. Hopefully that should. And just make sure that it is straight as it settles into the setting. It didn't click in, but I can see that it's nice and straight, as you can see there. And the rim of the setting, you can just feel it there with your nails. So that's the part that we're going to rub down. Now I'm going to show you two different ways to gypsy set into these earrings. And the second option that you'll see is a good option for if the stone's too loose and you can't get enough pressure onto the stone. But for this one, it's really tight into the setting. So all I'm going to use is a pointed burnisher, something you can easily make yourself. This is just an old burr that I've softened the point, and just using the very point to rub downward. So just pushing the metal down and doing it in sections to start with. And if the tool that you're using is a nicely polished steel, then it will impart onto the metal and you'll get that really nice bright cut rim going around the stone. Looks really neat. So what I'll do with this one now is I'll just give it a polish up, and that is finished. So I'll just take the other stud up to the stage of sitting the stone in. I'll purposely make it a little bit looser so you can see that it is a good option for an overcut setting. So the stone is in, and you'll see that it's a little bit loose, which will be good for this demonstration to show you how good these Dremel tooltips are. So that's the shape I've got. There is a video you can look at to learn more about them, and this is the Dremel engraver. I'm actually going to set it to just 1 for this particular job, so you can see there it's just past 1, and this is how easy it is to use. So hopefully I can keep my finger out the way. I just did that, otherwise the stone will shake itself out, and you'll be able to see a lot clearer what I'm doing. And to finish off, you can just use your pointed burnisher, and that will give it a nice shine. So the way to finish these stems off is to put a little groove on the around about 3mm from the end of the stems, and that just gives the butterfly a little bit of resistance as you're putting them on and pulling them off. So what I use is a pair of end cutters like so. Now you have to be careful not to squeeze too tight, but just turn your pliers around and that'll give you a little groove. Now you can improve on that and just put a little cut there with your piercing saw. And once it's got a little cut there, then it makes the little groove a little bit deeper all the way around. Okay, I'll do that on the other one. And there we have it, set, polished and finished. Hope you enjoyed.